All right, thanks everybody for joining this next edition of 30 Minutes with a Hacker, where we dive into topics around cybersecurity and we learn about it from a hacker's perspective. With me here today, and each call when we do these, are Brett Scott and Josh Harp. We've also got Jesse Reed, who joins from time to time on these calls. But today's topic is on the topic of the business of malware. And I'm going to kick this over to Brett to kind of set the table of how we're going to walk through this discussion.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's very interesting about the cybersecurity skills gap, which is one of the things that we're trying to tackle with the Tech Data Cyber Range, is it's not just the good guys that are having trouble with talent. The bad guys also have trouble. The knowledge, if you will, the special knowledge of how to hack and breach is something that a small select group of people know, and what they've done is they've managed to figure out how to take on less risk for themselves while still generating a lot of money for their nefarious activity. And the way that they do that is they've created essentially a criminal syndication capability, and there is this business of malware. So we got very creative, and we knocked out software as a service, and now it's malware as a service.
You can thank Kaspersky for that.
So I can tell you that clearly we are all marketing mavens waiting to unleash our career in advertising and marketing. But let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. So in the business of malware, it is something where you may have no ability to hack or cause any kind of damage with cyber attacks. However, you're in luck because there are large amounts of marketplaces out there that will happily sell you the service of that. And what's interesting about it is, for a bunch of anarchists, they actually run a business probably than most of your customers run their business. They have customer support, they have technical support, they have all of these great services, they're very responsive, and all of it is intended to essentially say, who are you trying to hurt? I'm going to help you do that, and then we're going to share the revenue that's generated as a result. So in the two different business models, one is which, hey, I got all the nasty weapons, you buy the gun for me, then you go hold up the bank. And more often than not, it is, I have this system for robbing banks. If you'd like to go ahead and be the one that does it, I'll do the getaway vehicle and the other stuff and the notes and the masks, and then we'll share the take. And so those are the two different main business models under the business of malware. And so we're going to kind of show you some of that now. So let's jump into the next thing here. So Josh, you want to jump in here? Or?
Yeah, so when we talk about the structure within malware as a service, or the business model that bad actors are using to monetize greatly on many gains, right, is they follow the skilled hackers, usually are the individuals doing research and development of the malware. They're the ones researching out new exploits. They're the ones crafting payloads for the 0 days. They're the ones turning sometimes what is identified as proof of concept scripts into actual real working scripts against many different infrastructures. Sometimes this could be a lone individual who's just looking to monetize on what they know. So sometimes what happens is there's no direct category you could place the skilled hacker into. Most people like to just call them black hats. But what happens in many situations is there may be an individual who has identified a particular vulnerability in some software or in a program running in the government space or running in the business space, that the payout or the bounty he would get if he went through the appropriate channels of disclosure isn't as much money as he might get through actually going out and developing his own software to then sell to other people's to propagate. The selling to other people's is where we get into the less skilled hackers. Think of this as your grunt work engineers. Those are the people who potentially have spamming lists. Those are individuals who already have started to amass different botnets. And a lot of the times, they're the ones that have, quote unquote, what's called bulletproof hosting solutions. So they're your infrastructure, right? They're providing you with that infrastructure as a service type of model in the event that you need to propagate out your malware that you've just purchased. And in many cases, what happens is it's a referral-based program. So if I'm the skilled hacker, or if Brett's the skilled hacker, right, and in this case, I'm the grunt monkey who has the infrastructure, and him and I know each other, we may give each other cutbacks if the individual who goes to buy malicious software from Brett was like, oh, I need infrastructure as well, and Brett's like, oh, I know a guy, his name's Josh here, he's got the infrastructure, and he's familiar with my program. So there are those, just as we would have in corporate America, referral-based programs, the bad guys have the same type of structure. And so that is how it would then reach a point of distribution or going out into reaching other individuals or even lesser skilled hackers. So this could be your kiddies or your skids, the people who just have mommy's credit card and a PayPal account and are angry at their school and want to boot them off the net, right? Typically, there are brokers for these types of transactions. One of the common terminologies used is
It's easy for you to say.
yeah, right. It's just money mules are people who are going to guarantee.
They're guarantors.
Yeah, the guarantors. Thank you.
Somebody speaks English,
right? Those would make sure that everybody in that chain or everyone interacting with each other is going to get paid. This is what helps to make sure that no one's being defrauded, because think about it again, you got bad actors, right? Bad actors are typically the ones who are doing the nefarious things, so there may be a certain events where they do defraud each other, and that's part of the reputation-based model that is used in much of malware as a service. So what is typically the product, right? So when we talk of the business of malware or malware as a service, that could be an all-encompassing term for many different things. There are certain aspects of what is going on here, which can be categorized as crimeware, but it's all part of essentially a Venn diagram where it all comes together and meets the central point, in that what they sell is either going to be a DDoS booters. So DDoS booters would be the example we gave I just gave earlier of some kid at a high school who's mad because he got a bad grade or he didn't get that date to the prom and he wants to just DDoS them off the net. He would be looking to purchase or buy a DDoS booter. We've incorporated some dollar figures based off of deep and dark web marketplaces and kind of the going rate for each of these products. And as you can see, when you get into the basic malware, right, where we say it's starting at $10, we're talking basic keyloggers, the simple solutions that maybe a skid doesn't have the capability to really program out yet, but really wants to get landed on his teacher's desktop so that he can change his grades, right?
What's a skid?
Skid is an unskilled attacker. It's usually a title given to someone who just used scripts or programs to go about fulfilling their end goal.
That's a slang of a slang. So script kiddies, skiddies, skid. That's how
that came, and before that was just kiddies.
Yeah.
So it's just constant progression. But they're the really, really unskilled hackers. You may not even consider them to be hackers because they just watch YouTube videos and think they can do stuff.
They're the power user of the hacking world.
Yeah. So although we categorize people providing that infrastructure as a service or providing that hosting capability, they have a level of capability, but it may not be to the point of development of actual 0 days and getting everything to work together to produce a ransomware or something like that. So basic malware starts around $10 and can go upwards of thousands depending upon its capabilities. Then you have zero-day exploits. Sometimes, again, all-encompassing in the area is people can just sell, right? So you have brokers of exploits who aren't necessarily interested in developing it out into malware, but they're willing to sell it to somebody else and then get a kickback for whatever it is that they develop. So you could either pay me now or you could pay me later based upon how well your malware works. And I'll just take a fraction of that, right? And then beyond that as well, you have custom ransomware. So people who will work together to further the goal of what they developed, right? Ransomware is just under the pretense that no one is going to pay more for their own data than you. And so a direct example of ransomware as a service under the guise of malware as a service could be Grand Crab. Grand Crab isn't necessarily under constant development that much anymore, but now that Emote has taken over in many different instances, and there are ransomware variants under Emote that are used, but Grand Crab was an example of that, and that's upwards in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so we just did a cyber exercise for the state of Wisconsin last week, and for that, I actually wrote custom malware, which was a reversible ransomware. And so what we did as part of that exercise was we showed folks what a script-based ransomware would look like and how simple and small it was. And part of the purpose of that was to also show that we could actually configure the ransom such that your countermeasures are all defeated. So if you try to restore from backup and or any of those other things, we would literally be able to detect that in the ransomware, and it would be a trigger to the ransomware to say, kick off everything that is on my network that can see me. If you are hearing this broadcast, lock up the systems that you're on. And all of that can be done very, very simple. The entire piece of reversible malware was under 150 lines of code.
Yeah. So although that's simple for a skilled security professional or someone in the know-how to develop out, it's uncommon that the people actually running or dropping ransomware in different environments or using spam campaigns to propagate malware actually know the level of effort necessary to develop it out. So they end up paying thousands of dollars for someone's potential hours of time, right?
For me, it was 4 hours.
Yeah. So it's you have, in those cases, because of the capabilities within that ransomware, if it was to be sold to someone on a forum or in a darknet marketplace, it could go upwards of tens of thousands of dollars just because of the inability for security solutions to detect that it is there. And so moving along with what's going on, there are some screenshots we've provided to show the way that the selling goes about. And so this is on just a forum that is frequented by various nefarious people. And on it, you can see that he has a listing for certain types of offerings. He has general bots. He has some Chronos Trojans, which is a banking Trojan. He has some hash hacking capabilities. He has some spyware. It's just a general posting of here's what I'm offering and what my capabilities are. He also goes into detail about some additional things that he can do for you if you were interested. The blurred out piece is his contact information, because obviously we're not going to give these nefarious people a platform to sell their crimeware. But he's basically saying, you know, if you need a grabber or if you need an extension for an X browser, or you want to capture credentials or do these types of things, I have this capability. And as well, I'm going to warranty for you my software, and I'll provide other conditions of support and updates, and we'll figure that out once we, talk. And so,
what website is this on? This is in the dark net, right?
It's in the, you're not ever gonna go their website.
Yeah.
It's, there are, these types of marketplaces are very common. They periodically get raided, but it's, again, it's a displacement thing. The police are playing whack-a-mole. Agility of these marketplaces to move and start up and gain their followings is done in minutes. So there are thousands of these that are viable marketplaces to find exactly these types of postings.
So if you go through, so this is a recent posting, but the same forum has been used in many different threat reports from Symantec, from McAfee, from Kaspersky. So a little bit of legwork, you'll be able to identify what the forum is. With that, you also see there's some green text there, and in the green text, this actor is providing you what his guarantees are. The fact that he's going to give you some level of anonymity and that he's going to provide you support. It just goes to show the, not necessarily effectiveness of the business, but that the fact that they've actually turned it into a real business model in which they've realized, if I'm not legit, I'm not going to get paid, and I'm not going to get revenue, and I'm not going to have people referring others to me, and I'm just not going to be able to continue down that road. So this was just a generic posting we had found with just some, hey, here's what I offer.
But the primary message is quality and reliability, which, again, for a bunch of folks that claim to be anarchists, the fact that they're going out with the message of quality and reliability is, I think, really quite funny.
So this post was made about 2 days ago, and this is more of a specific posting. And the reason we call it specific posting is because this actor is specifically looking for partners to join him in a ransomware development project that he's already done, but he just wants for people to help profit from it. What's interesting about his posting is that he identifies whom you have to target. And it says, preferably US and UK businesses. So you may be able to determine maybe what country he's from if he's saying what specific businesses to target. But this is also part of verifying whether or not people are going to go about the initiatives one actor has for the rest of the group. So we may be able to conclude that this is one guy who's looking for people to join him in his campaign, but there are stipulations to being one of his partners. He lets you know about the different ransomware features he's got and what he's ultimately offering to those who are interested. So on the next and final slide, what we have is some information regarding Emote. And so Emote is a malware as a service type of solution and botnet that was and had disappeared 4 months ago, but has now come back onto the playing field. And so with that, it is or has been known to be used by operators of the Ryuk and BitPaymer ransomware strains. And if you want to know more about Emote and the capabilities that it has and what it's been doing to businesses, we've included a ZDNet article. There are also some Ars Technica articles about it. But this is a direct example of known malware that is out there and botnet that is being used to directly impact organizations with varying effects.
So it's essentially a franchise strain, and even though the franchise strain is being dismantled periodically, this is the resurgent of the franchise back in there. So they constantly are generating new variations of their strategy, and then they're bringing it to market.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a general overview of ransomware or malware general malware as a service with specifics around different types of Trojans and ransomware, and how one could easily go about with no skill set and just the right amount of money, getting their hands on potential cyber weapons.
And what we didn't include in here is there are a lot of posts out there in these marketplaces that say, hey, look, I have access to a major corporation. I'm one of their IT guys, and I can infect basically the whole organization. What will that get me? Who's got something that will make this into a business model for me? Yeah. And so you have push and pull on both sides. You have, if you will, willing conspirators that are looking for somebody to help them transact a collection of money. You have the folks that are purveyors of capability, and then you have people who are saying, well, I have this one piece, but I lack the larger part of the puzzle, so who else wants to coalesce around me to make this business thing work out? So it's a massive business model, and on top of that, there are secondary business models. We don't really want to get into the full ecosystem here, but when you have the ill-gotten gains through Bitcoin, Bitcoin is not an anonymous transaction. So there are these folks that call it Bitcoin washing, where they will essentially tumble the coins back and forth to make it very difficult to track you down. So there's just a very large ecosystem of business.
Right. It's part of an umbrella, right? So it's really just criminal enterprise offering solutions to other criminals and less skilled hackers and potentially people or employees or students with a grudge and just someone who's willing to go out and be foot soldiers, part of a bigger campaign. And part of it as well is one of the things you might ask yourself is why would actors who've created Emote allow for or permit for operators of other ransomware or other solutions to be part of what they're doing? The answer to that is because it provides them a layer of abstraction as well as obfuscation, in that they're in a way washing their infrastructure and they're washing through what they're doing and what's going on. It's the same reason why Chinese APTs dump their proxies online for everyone to use. It's because it's a covering tracks type of mentality to not necessarily sidestep controls, but to make it difficult to attribute and directly pinpoint what's where and what's happening and going on.
Yeah, and that gets to many strategies that work to protect them from themselves and their own actions. The running joke, if you're a hiker, is I don't have to be faster than bear, I just have to be faster than you. That's exactly the same strategy that they're applying here, which is I'll bring in other folks who are probably not good as good at security as I am, so they will be the ones that get caught. When a police or a prosecutor get their hands on the first person they catch, that's the mastermind.
In their get the book thrown at them. It's not me. Just like what happened in Fin7, right? They couldn't get the criminal enterprise, but they got the guy running the infrastructure, so now they're throwing the book at him.
Exactly right. And he was literally just a person with a botnet screen. So, again, that's the world that we're in. That's what, our strategies have bred this type of environment. And as a direct result, the bad guys are having a field day at our expense.
Do we have any questions from anyone that's on the call here?
Hi, this is Sam Lucas. Yeah, I had a question. So you explained that very well, how they hide their tracks and everything. So even amongst each other, they're anonymous. Like if we wanted to put an undercover white hacker in there to just gather as much information as possible, that wouldn't work either, huh?
Not really.
They generally sniff you out. There's several organizations Brett and I know about who have done this thing, where they take certain parts of data to help gain access into secret or invite-only communities, and typically they use the same list everywhere they go. And when you have the same guy using the same list everywhere he goes, and it's usually a year or a year and a half old, it's just bad practice and bad mojo. And so people typically know that that's the guy who's there to provide the in on what's happening in the community. So there are certain mechanisms for the research aspect of it, of what you're getting at, of what are threat actors doing? Can we get the intelligence on what it is they're going to target next or what they're developing and working on? There are certain ways to do that. But for the traditional mindset that is typically found in the white hat hacker community, it is very difficult for them to overcome certain types of hurdles that they may face to gain a further foothold in that community that they're trying to gain an in on.
So let me give you an example. The statewide cyber exercise that we did in Wisconsin was for their crisis response team. It was 50 people, and all they do all day, every day, is fight, infections and breaches. And so there are plenty of folks in law enforcement and intelligence on there. And so I quite literally wrote the malware. But in writing the malware, I put in certain things that made it look like another entity did it. And all the law enforcement and intelligence and military took the bait, and they were absolutely confident that a nation state was the one that was responsible for this. And when I said, well, gentlemen, I literally wrote this, and this was me, and it had nothing to do with this. None of this is copied from anywhere else. They had a very confused look because they were absolutely sure that it was this other thing. And I said, this is how bad guys can mislead you into thinking it was somebody else that did that. So, for example, the alerting mechanism I put in my ransomware to tell all the other things to lock up the computers that they're on, it actually used a Russian word for emergency to be the word that it was there. And then I did really simple, stupid stuff, like in the profiling of the operating system that it was running on. If it was running Windows, it would return Ameriki, which is Russian slang for Americans. So again, those kinds of simple context clues make a law enforcement-minded individual who lacks the sophistication of this understanding say, ooh, there's the shiny red dot. This must be what it is. That's it. I've got it. Ooh, this is my thing. So the business of ransomware gets into consulting how to throw off the scent of the people trying to get you.
So it's a cat. It is something that can be done, but it is ultimately something that is going to continue to be a cat and mouse game, just because of the layer and the trust-based relationships that a lot of these groups have established amongst themselves, and who they're truly willing to work with, and who brings in whom, and how those conversations begin.
So it's really analogous to changing the secret handshake all the time.
Well, very often it is undetectable because a lot of these, bad guys, even people who hate each other and are completely politically, religiously, whatever, in opposition to each other, they still collaborate really, really well. Whereas all of the good guys, they think I'm the secret squirrel and all my information is special and knowledgeable and I have an advantage over everybody else, and if I tell anybody, then I'll lose my advantage. That their lack of collaboration is what creates the rich target environment for the people who do collaborate.
Well, and just think about the example of Emote, right? The original intent behind Emote was just to amass a botnet, create DDoS booters, and to just propagate and inflict as much harm and disruption as possible. And then creators of Ryuk and other ransomware variants were like, hey, you got something awesome there. What if we work together, I pay you a fee, you give me access to your bots, I drop malware or ransomware on that, and then give you a cut, right? So they're each, in a way, reaching the same end goal, though they have varying opinions on how to get there.
Great. Well, I know we're coming to the top of the hour, and any quick question before we wrap up, or are we good? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Brett and Josh. Always great to get your insights, and I look forward to hearing or being on the next call with everyone next month. Take care. Have a good day.